I guess one question that I had is with the PDOM stuff. So I guess what's the relationship between that and the function matching? So if you have a PDOM file for one of your firmware images, that lets you apply types as well to
exactly. But
other
first,
okay.
Yeah, first you need to know the correct function name. So this is the diffing. And then you can also apply types, but you cannot apply types to a function of that you don't know where it is. So, I mean, it's basically two projects in one paper, but obviously two projects that help a lot with the Bluetooth firmware and also with other firmware binaries.
Very cool. And in your paper or talks, do you have links to the Bluetooth work that you've done elsewhere so that we can go and read that too?
Yes. So actually everything that we open source so far is also on the same GitHub group. So you can just take a look there. But Internal Blue is the largest project. So that's the main project for everything Bluetooth. Then we have Nexmon, which is the project for everything Wi-Fi. So that's also a lot of firmware that's compiled in very similar ways. And a colleague of mine already tested it for Wi-Fi.
Cool. So let's see. Andrew over on Slack is asking if you don't have any symbols, but you do have a lot of firmware, can you use the techniques to basically do some kind of like clustering sort of grouping and then look at differences between the images?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to train the differ then if you don't know like which functions to build this similarity tree of. So yeah, for not having any good training set, then you are again back to using a raw bindiff or Diaphora. But actually I found like if you don't have any similar function names in two firmwares and use bindiff or Diaphora, then they also perform quite bad. So yeah, it depends.
One thing that I was curious about is when you were showing the table of the results by CPU type, I was surprised that the ARM7 TDMI ones were, apparently so different from the Cortex M3 ones, because my impression was that the underlying instruction set was very, very similar. So do you have an idea of what was going on there?
Yeah, I mean, even if it's very similar, it's sufficient if the compiler just did something different. I mean, even as you could see, just adding the stack canaries or removing them also breaks it. So probably just combined with slightly different compiler settings or something.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very fragile to this, but I mean, as long as you have this large batch of similar firmwares, it's very fast. So it just depends on your use case.
Cool. Okay, we've got one question is, how well do you think this would work with manually named functions? So if you do sort of a single pass of manual reverse engineering as opposed to relying on vendor symbols?
Yeah, of course you can do that. Actually, I did that for the first firmware that we had before I found the symbols. And so I think Dennis spent like 3 months in the firmware, and I spent another 3 months just by looking into the Bluetooth specification and then, let's say, naming the whole secure simple pairing state machine just on the state transition. So that's stuff that I did, but that's so much work. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I guess we've got one more question, I think, which is from Linus. He is asking if if it's possible to maybe do this on the IL or some kind of intermediate language instead of on the raw instructions, which maybe would give some more robustness between different versions.
For this, there's already tools. So for example, Diaphora even uses the decompiled output. So if you have Diaphora on top of IDA with a decompiler, then it can do this kind of thing just by decompiling. But then again, you have this issue of identifying function starts. And I mean, so the IL would be on the input in this case, but you have a target, which is a raw binary where you don't know function starts. So yeah, it's not for our tool, but basically this kind of tooling exists within Diaphora.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that maybe with that, we will wrap up our workshop. And thank you very, very much for excellent talk and for answering our questions so well.